Hello and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's weekly show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow. With me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. We are broadcasting on all our digital platforms throughout the United Kingdom and across the world. We're bringing you quality pro-UK comment and analysis every Wednesday from 7 until 8 p.m. on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, and on TikTok. And we're looking forward to a great show tonight on this lovely balmy evening. I hope it's nice where you are. Now, folks, please, if you're watching on X, can you give us a repost? If you're watching on YouTube, please do give us a share, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you're watching on Facebook, please also share, because this is the way that we get the message out, is through our viewers sharing this alternative take on our fantastic United Kingdom. Please tell us where you're watching from, folks. Please send in your greetings. We'll give you a shout out. If you've any comments about what's happening in politics at the moment, we're always love to hear from them. So please do send them to us. We'll do our best to read them out. And if you're watching on TikTok, please also send in your comments on this fantastic Wednesday evening. I hope it's been a nice day for you. It's been a busy day for us here at the office, and we always like to top it off with a fantastic show in the evening. So thank you to all the viewers there. Now, what's been on your minds this week? We've had a busy week. We had a busy weekend. We were in George Square and we were saying hello to the stand up for mass immigration, open borders, bogus asylum seeking, and overstretched public services. We were speaking to that crowd. They like to go under the inaccurate euphemism, stand up to racism. They had a rally of maybe about 400 at the most, maybe 450. If we're being very generous, probably not even that much, probably around about 400 at the tops of people in George Square. Interesting assortment of characters. We'll get to them in a moment. So myself and a colleague decided to say hello and to give them the gen on why we need to have our borders controlled if we are to have a serious country. And they were not best pleased. We had a fantastic reception from them, it had to be said, a very rowdy and vocal reception, probably negative as far as they were concerned, though I would say if anybody's seen the videos, we'll publish one or two of the videos in a moment so you can see. But it was a fun day out and we got our point across. And in fact, our YouTube videos of the day, our live action sequence, has got 11,000 views on YouTube, and our street video, which we uploaded shortly after coming out of the square, has got 67,000 views as of this morning. So we were very pleased with that. And what I want to do this evening is just to expand upon what our particular message was to them, and also to talk about how their particular message just not hit home. It just does not land. And while they had more people than we had two of us, and as I say, they had maybe at the most 400, probably about 350 to 400. It was all the same types of people, all the same old faces. I mean, one of the people who were shouting at me most vociferously was a national journalist, like for the national newspaper. Like, you know, he's actually a columnist anyway for them, you know. So that's the kind of people they're getting. And another assortment of unusual characters, really, to be frank with you. They like to pretend that they're trade unionists, but I mean, when I think of trade unionists, I think of Len Murray and Arthur Scargill and Mick McGahey. And to be frank with you, none of these people look these people were perfectly normal looking compared to what your so-called trade unionist is today, or at least the ones who bother to demonstrate against Alistair McConnachie and colleagues. So we'll get to that in a minute. I just want to say hello, though, to one or two people. Derek is first in tonight, says good evening to Alistair and the AFFG family around the world. Another great sunny day at the great British city of Edinburgh. And he's at the Fringe today. Hope you're enjoying it, Derek. Derek also says, well done to Team GB also last Saturday. Great work. Yes, Team GB at the Olympics, did they come, was it 7th, I think, in the overall medal table, which is not too bad. Paul says, greetings from the parched garden of England, aka Kent. Hello to Alan and Scott. Good to see you, Scott, from sunny Ayrshire. Ayrshire is a beautiful, great British county. Hello to British legends. I spent some time in Ayrshire. I used to live in Ayrshire. Or at least my parents used to live in Ayrshire, and I used to hang around as a 10-year-old. Hello to Alexandra from York, who says, I think you do a fantastic job. Well, thank you, Alexandra. We have a great team here at A Force for Good. We could not do what we do, whether on the internet or physically or in any other manner, without the team behind us. And they know who they are. And they're great activists and great supporters. And they all get the thanks. Hello to TC, who says, good evening, all fellow unionists everywhere. Now, folks, please do share this message on Twitter. Let's see if we are out there on Twitter yet. I'm not seeing us having been pulled up on Twitter to advertise to people. Hopefully that will come in a few moments. But, oh, here we are. Yep, standing up for our borders, our exciting action in George Square. That's being pushed out there on Twitter by the great Twitter algorithm. Fantastic. Fantastic. Now, hi to Oksana and to Pom. Aaron on TikTok says, how was the utter failure of your far-right demo on Saturday down with the union? Well, as I'm about to explain to you, sir, it was a great success, because success is measured in how effective is a two-man effort against 350, 400 other people. How successful can that be? Well, I would say 67,000 people watching you on YouTube is actually somewhat of a major success, not to include the other 11,000 on our live video. So it actually went very well. And let's talk about that just now. Now, we do have some pictures of the event, which unfortunately, Aaron, you won't see if you're on TikTok, but you will see if you shift over to youtube.com/UK A Force for Good. And let's go through the pictures from the top. Now, as I say, the demonstration was by a group called Stand Up for Mass Immigration, Open Borders, and Generally Buggering Up the Country. But they do go under the euphemism Stand Up to Racism, so-called. And they had this big banner here. And I think these pictures are from a photographer on the day who has got them out on his website. That's why they're copyrighted there at the bottom. And it's okay for us to certainly show these about and urge everybody to go over to Billy Knox Photography on Facebook. He is one of Glasgow's best photographers, and he puts out all of this stuff. And you can purchase pictures from him as well if you want to do that and to support him. And it should also be said that he is simply a non-party political and non-political photographer. One of the best in Glasgow is Billy. Anyway, this is one of his photographs here with his stamp down in the left-hand corner. It says, "Stop Islamophobia, stop the hate." Now, along the bottom there, you'll see all the people who are invested in this. And it is all trade unions and NGOs. Now, these people will talk about representing the people of Glasgow, but what they do is they represent a very small leadership cadre in these unions and all the people who work for these NGOs who are generally paid by the British taxpayer. So much of this is actually your taxpayers' work, your taxpayers' money at work here. Okay, we've seen enough of that banner. But that was just simply to say that that's the kind of people. And as I say, these are not your normal looking trade unionists, but that's the kind of sorts of folk that were at the event. Maybe one or two of them have had a job in their life. I'm not entirely sure. That is not working for an NGO. Now, what we did was we walked into the square and we immediately caused a big divide because half of the people wanted to listen to us and less than half stayed with the boring organizers there. And you'll see that in that picture. Now, we're down at the bottom right here, and you'll see the the line there of yellow vests. That's the police separating probably about 150, 200 at the very most people who who confronted us. They weren't able to surround us as such. And they had all been people who had hitherto been listening to the most boring speeches imaginable at the other end of the square. But the kind of respectable sorts stayed to listen to the boring speakers, and probably about maybe 150 or so stayed to listen to the boring speakers, while the other 200 came over to watch the main event, which was, of course, Alistair McConnachie giving it large. And we, one or two pictures here of the sorts of people who were against us. That photograph, by the way, is taken by the webcam or the George Square webcam. Okay. So that's like up front with some protesters who were just shouting inanities really at us. Okay. So that's a photograph taken from behind myself, and my colleague there on the right with the green rucksack, he was holding a big, well, not a big banner, but a poster rather, that said "Asylum Frauds Out." And that's a very effective message. Okay. More of the people who were facing us there. As you can see, we really cheered up their day, because otherwise it would have been an extremely boring day for these people. And we actually made it worth their while really coming out. So they should be thanking us for that. Okay. Other people there giving their opinion. And there is a really good photograph, again from Billy Knox, of the police separating us. Now, I must say this about the police. They did a very good job. They kept us safe, and they let us say our piece. We came in to give a 10-minute speech, and we gave a 10-minute speech. And so it went very smoothly. Okay. There you go. That's Alistair there on the right, which is to say me. And that is my colleague with his poster on the left that says "Asylum Frauds Out." Okay. Another picture there. And that's us just, I think we're leaving there. That's another one that I found on the internet. We're leaving. So people are looking the other way as we stroll off the square. Okay. And that's us just prior to leaving the square entirely. looking very pleased with ourselves, as you can see, as rightly we should be. There you go. Bang on. That's a good picture. Really good picture from an excellent photographer called Billy Knox. Okay. I think that's all the pictures from that particular event. So let's look at, to give a flavor of it viscerally, let's look at one of the videos here. Now, in this video, I am pointing out that it's not appropriate to call anybody so-called extreme or far right, for example, when one is simply pointing out things that need to be said. And so please do have a look at this first video. It lasts for about a minute or so. Let's bring it up.
It is not acceptable to smear millions of concerned citizens as extreme. It's not extreme to be concerned about our country being literally invaded every day across the English Channel. It's normal and it's necessary to be concerned. It's not extreme to stop children being attacked and murdered. It's normal and necessary to stop the dangers to our children. It's not extreme to want to stop the birds. It's normal and necessary. It's not extreme to send such so-called asylum seekers back across the English Channel. It's normal and it's necessary. It's not extreme to oppose your country being effectively colonised and making. It's normal and necessary. It's not extreme to speak about these things. It's normal and necessary.
So there you go. It's not extreme to speak about these things. It's normal and necessary. And that's really our message on that matter. Now, in that regard, what we have to be conscious of going forward from now on is that the mass media is, by which I mean the legacy press and the mainstream TV and radio channels, are going to call anybody who opposes levels of mass immigration and the small boat invasion across the English Channel. They are going to call all of these people far right. That's very unfortunate because it's not correct, but that's the frame that they're going to use. Now, the legacy media is going to do that because it's going to fall in behind Keir Starmer. Why is it going to fall in behind Keir Starmer? Because the legacy media now needs government money to survive. Okay, it needs government money. It doesn't matter if you're the Sun or the Daily Record or the Times or the Daily Telegraph. You need government adverts and you need government favour if you're to survive the marketplace at the moment. So all of these papers, whether they're traditionally thought of left-wing or right-wing, will follow the signal from Keir Starmer and his Labour government. And so he's going to call everybody who supports our borders being controlled, he's going to call them far right, and the media will just be his clapping seal on those matters. So people are going to have to, stiffen up, as it were, and realize that everybody's going to get called that now. If you're an enemy of the state, which means if you're anywhere to the right of Keir Starmer, you're going to be called far right. It's just an unfortunate fact. It's not a clever idea that they should do that, because all that will do is normalize the slogan. But that's what they're going to do. And I noticed this because we got called that in the Sunday Telegraph the next day, when it said a small number of far right supporters, one of whom held up a sign saying "Asylum fraud's out," yes, were led away as a line of officers was deployed to separate the two sides. Well, yes, we were led away after we gave our speech, which lasted for 10 minutes. It would have been nice if they had mentioned that, but they didn't. They didn't want to mention that. Anyway, so be it. So that's something that everybody's going to get called now. But as we said there, it's normal and it's necessary to be concerned about open borders. It's normal and necessary to be concerned about the small boat invasion. These are things that a normal country would simply accept as needing to be taken care of. There wouldn't be any debate about it. I put a tweet out today about that if we were a normal country, what would we do? And if we were a normal country, we would most certainly send in the Royal Navy and the Royal Marines to stop these boats coming across, would forcibly drag them back to France, and the Royal Marines would be allowed to respond appropriately if they were presented with physical force. And that's just what a normal country would do. And we would not care what France's reaction would be. It would just be, France, you have to deal with that. We're dealing with our problem, you deal with your problem. But our politicians are not going to do that. The Labour Party is not going to do that. But what we can do is we can normalise that attitude over the next 5 years. So when there is a chance to replace the Starmer government, at least many, 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 many more people will know what needs to be done and will not be afraid to speak about it. Normalising the correct response is the best that we can do at the moment. And we are certainly in it to win it, as they say. So there's another video here. And what I'm speaking about in this video is the importance of finding politicians who will speak for us and asking, where are the politicians? Why are they not speaking for us? So let's go ahead and roll that second video.
There is nobody on the other side of the square today who will address the concerns of the Scottish people. Because in the transformation of our city, of our country, Scotland, and of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, it's as if the politicians of all parties, upon whom we depend for our protection, yet they choose to support open borders. They choose to support tens of thousands of unvetted young men coming into our country before they will support us, the Scottish people. So where are our politicians? The leaders of all parties, SNP, Labour, Tory, Greens, Lib Dem, they all support this mass immigration which causes housing problems, social services problems, endless waiting lists in our international health service. Glasgow to become like London, where the police have become overwhelmed with crime. So what about us? Who speaks for us? What about the concerned citizens of Glasgow, Scotland and the UK?
Indeed, what about the concerned citizens of Glasgow, Scotland and the UK? You see, many people don't understand just how bad this is as far as our politicians are concerned. Like in Scotland, we have nobody who will speak for us. By us, I mean the concerned citizens who don't want their country being invaded. And I can prove this because I keep a close eye on them all. You know, some people put their hopes in Labour and somehow Anas Sarwar somehow winning in 2026. If you think that guy wants to stop immigration, then quite frankly, I've got a dinghy to sell you. I can absolutely assure you he does not. And he wrote this article. He gets, for some reason, he gets a column in the Daily Record. And he's talking here about there has been talk of a planned demonstration in Glasgow by the far right. Now, what he's talking about here in this article from the 5th of August, 2024, is the Glasgow Cabbie's event on the 7th of September, which will be attended by lots of normal, concerned citizens, men, women, and children. It's a family-orientated event, but he's calling it far right straight away. And then he goes, they're not welcome here. These thugs want to pretend they speak for people who feel disenfranchised or disengaged, but they don't. These thugs, okay? So he's talking about the normal people of Glasgow who are concerned about these things as thugs. Again, he doesn't want to talk about immigration whatsoever, but in the next 2 years, 20 months, we have to push this on him and find out what his specific policies are. And if he is not for stopping mass immigration, if he is not for stopping the small boats, if he is for resettling so-called asylum seekers throughout Scotland, then nobody can vote for the Labour Party in 2026. We must ensure that as a policy. Okay, he has to know there will be democratic consequences at the ballot box for not supporting British and Scottish borders. He has to know that. Now, the SNP and Greens and Lib Dems, we know they're just going to be inane and stupid on the matter anyway. But at least with Labour, we have to put that pressure on them. And of course, Stephen Flynn, the leader of the SNP, he also gets a column in the Daily Record. Isn't it amazing if you're an MP and you get to blabber all the time in these newspapers? And he ends here. Our country needs immigration to prosper, by which he means Scotland. And he said, we must be unashamed on why Scotland needs more immigrants to thrive. Okay, so in 2023, the latest figures we have is that 1.2 million people, long-term immigrants, came into the United Kingdom. For Stephen Flynn, that's not enough. If it was 1.5 million, it still wouldn't be enough. If it was 2 million, it still wouldn't be enough. He, and it looks like Anas Sarwar, they will never go the other way. If it's 2 million immigrants a year, they're not going to say, oh, maybe we should bring it down to 1.2 million. No, they'll say it's not enough. We need 2.2 million. You see, they're not interested at all in controlling it. Now, I'm not sure why this is. I can't always figure out what's behind it, but there is just something in their mentality and in their political outlook that will never call for borders to be controlled. And we have to be conscious of that. And we have to figure out, well, how do we hurt them at the ballot box so that they're forced to give lip service, if anything, to that point of view? And that's the program for the next 20 months, is making sure that we put the democratic screws on, especially the Labour Party in Scotland. But we also require the Tories to step up as well and start to articulate the necessity for border control, for an end to mass immigration, because we do not need it. And let me just make sure that I've covered everything I wanted to say about the rally before we move on. Yeah, we do not need it. Now, I'm going to come back to the question of mass immigration shortly in the program, but let's look at the comments now. Oh, Derek, thank you very much, sir, for sending a super sticker worth £5 to our via YouTube. Folks, if you're watching on YouTube, look at the little $sign, click on that, and if you like what we say, please do send us in something like Derek there, who, if everybody was like Derek and sent in a £5, we would be winning this. Absolutely. Nana says, rule Britannia. Can't disagree with that. Catherine says, it's not fair when they call us far right. It's only going to anger people more. It seems like one rule for them. Bill Thompson says, commenting in support of this channel. Thank you, sir. Comments help the algorithm. They help more people to see it. Alan says, you stood with a speech and a point of view. They stood with hatred and bile coming out their mouths. David Passival says, Britannia can't even stop a dinghy. And you know what? You're absolutely right. Isn't that an absolute shame? Rule Britannia, indeed, and we can't stop a dinghy. Well, we could, of course, but what we don't have is the leaders who will stop it. And that's been the case for many, many, many years now. We just have a liberal elite misgoverning the entire United Kingdom to the detriment of us all. So yes, you are right there, albeit ironically so. What do you suggest, says user 181284? Well, as I mentioned there, what we need to do is we need to change the narrative. We need to get people realizing that what needs to happen, for starters, is the Royal Navy needs to drag the small boats back, and that will create a massive international incident, and it will move the debate our way. And so that by the time 2026 comes along, everybody, or the majority of people, are saying we need to send in the Royal Navy, we need to send in the Royal Marines, we need to drag these boats back, and we need to do that regardless of what happens. And no longer will people just accept this idea that because somebody claims to be an asylum seeker, that they're somehow persecuted or underprivileged or vulnerable or some other such nonsense. Most of them are not. Most of them are not. Although many of them do get given refugee status, but that's simply because the system is broken and they need to clear these people out of the system. And also, as Callum says there, stop the free money. That's an immediate thing that should be done. Stop the free money. Another thing which can be done in Scotland, and thank you for asking that question, is that these places that are being converted into for accommodation for refugees or asylum seekers, there should be an end to that. You know, to convert a building, it needs planning permission. The Scottish so-called government might not be in charge of the numbers of people coming into Britain, but it can stop planning for asylum seeker conversions. And so the planning system should be used to stop. I mean, if this is the sort of thing I would do if I was in charge, I would say you cannot convert a building for asylum seeker or refugee accommodation. So we're not taking anybody. And then guess what? You'll find, along with other, when you cut off the money, when you do other things, then the stream of people, the constant flow of people will relax, because it's only coming in such quantities because of the benefits, material and economic, which are being provided. You cut these things off, believe me, the flow of people will dry up. But this is all just obvious stuff. But because we don't have a political class which will articulate these things, then the people are lost through want of good leadership. There's a Bible verse on that. Somebody tell me what that one is. I forget how it goes. John Kerr says, why did the Tories not stop it then? The same Tories you were promoting. Well, John Kerr, you've never seen our stuff. We've never promoted the Conservative Party. And why did the Tories not stop it? Because they're leftists, because they're also internationalists. They're not like British nationalists or Scottish nationalists. They're internationalists. That's why they don't stop it, and they won't stop it. You know, one of the leaders for the Conservative Party, one of the people who's standing for leadership of the Conservative Party is Kemi Badenoch. Kemi Badenoch actually lobbied for more work and student visas. And OC says, we Scottish nationalists are internationalists too. Well, you're so internationalist, you don't actually want Scotland to have a border, OC. So what I'm saying is, we're more Scottish nationalist than you are, because we believe Scotland should have a border. Do you believe Scotland should have a border that should be controlled? Because if you do, then you should not be voting for the SNP. The only party at the moment that would, well, what other party is there that's going to actually call for the borders to be closed? The only ones we know about is Reform. So if you're a real Scottish nationalist, maybe you should vote for them in 2026. Trainer says every one of us should ask the same question. Scotland is part of Britain, obviously. Yep, we agree with that. Oh, Jimmy Jimmy Stewart has sent a super sticker. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We do appreciate the support of that. Jimmy Stewart, thank you. DTube says, OC, follow our lead. Send in a super chat if you want attention. Totally agree. Totally agree. Paul Hadlow says, not a single person's safety is dependent on them being here in the United Kingdom. That's correct. We are not, this is a UK. It's not the URC, the Universal Refugee Centre. Okay, this is the UK. Claire Hamill says that don't think the fighting age men are here just for the benefits. That's what they want you to think. Well, who knows why they're here? It surprises me as well. If I was one of those guys, I wouldn't see my future in the United Kingdom, quite frankly. So, but nevertheless, I think it is probably just because of the benefits. But if they all wanted to get together, well, that would be an issue, wouldn't it? Derek says, let's all give AFFG a super sticker. Keep the good fight going. Thank you. To give us a super sticker, click on the little $sign there on YouTube. Fantastic. Now, I just want to briefly talk about this day in British history before we go back to talking about the immigration issue and also the big event coming up on the 7th of September. Now, after we've spoken about on this day in British history, we will ask a wee question and the winner will get 5 of these greeting cards which say, is your home here? Defend it. Which is from a 1915 World War I recruiting poster. Let's just look at one or two things here on TikTok. Okay, so on this day in British history, it is the National Day of one of the British Overseas Territories. Now, Britain has got 14 what are called British Overseas Territories, and these are what you might call the remnants of what used to be the British Empire. And basically all of them are actually very strategically situated, and they're all worth their weight in gold to the British family of nations throughout the world. And so we love our British Overseas Territories and we try to remember them. And today is it's the National Day of Tristan da Cunha. Now, people will say, where's Tristan da Cunha? And we've got a map here, which we'll just put up, which shows exactly where it is. And it's away down in the South Atlantic. I suppose the nearest place to it is actually the Falklands, although it's still many, many miles away from that. And it's part of the territory that's called Tristan da Cunha, Ascension Island, and St. Helena, which are groups of islands there in the Atlantic. And it celebrates today, the 14th of August, celebrates the day in 1816, which is 208 years ago, when a garrison aboard HMS Falmouth took possession of Tristan da Cunha on behalf of King George III and the British Empire. And they did that to ensure that the French would not be able to use Tristan da Cunha as an island base to try to rescue Napoleon, who Britain had exiled on St. Helena, even though St. Helena was 1,250 miles north. The British took Tristan da Cunha just to keep it from the French in case they had any designs on rescuing their man in St. Helena. And the capital of it in the next pic here, it goes by the very romantic name of Edinburgh of the Seven Seas. And it's the only settlement on what's largely a fairly rocky outcrop. There we go. There's Edinburgh off the Seven Seas there. So as you can see, it's a pretty dramatic looking landscape there. Pretty dramatic. And its flag, which we'll just bring up, consists of a Union flag and the island's coat of arms, which is a longboat above a naval crown with a central shield decorated with albatrosses and flanked by rock lobsters above the motto which says, "Our faith is our strength." Our faith is our strength. Okay, so that's Tristan da Cunha, and it's quite well known these days. It's the way it makes a living, as it were, is selling stamps. When there's events, usually British events, it will create ceremonial stamps that you can send away for, and so that brings an income into the island. And actually, their stamp collections are extremely good. I wish we could do more of that in the United Kingdom. Just follow Tristan da Cunha's lead. Like every day, they'll produce a new stamp for something that happened on that day. I'm exaggerating, of course, but they do produce several really nice celebratory stamps, usually commemorating British events several times a year. The Tristan da Cunha post office, last time I looked, they had a Facebook page as well. So that's on this day, 14th of August, the date of the great Tristan da Cunha's discovery, or rather its claim for the United Kingdom in order to keep it from the French. I'll ask a question about that in a minute, and the winner will get these fantastic greeting cards. There's one or two tax havens, but Tristan da Cunha is not one, I don't believe. Now, yes, the question is, on this day, 14th of August, back in 1816, Britain took possession of Tristan da Cunha in order to keep it from the French, who could have been trying to rescue which man? Okay, that's the question that's just occurred to me there. What was the name of the man that the French may have been trying to rescue that led to Britain taking Tristan da Cunha so the French couldn't get it? Send in your answers to contact@aforceforgood.uk. Let's get that up there. Contact@aforceforgood.uk. Send in your answers to that, and we'll announce the winner at the top of the hour. Yes, let's get back to talking about what was going on and what's coming up on the 7th of September. Now, Saturday, the 7th of September, the great activist, the Glasgow Cabbie, is having a rally in George Square, and it's a family rally for everybody. It's going to be a peaceful rally, and it's going to be for the normal and concerned citizens of Glasgow, the environs, and anybody in Scotland that can make it. And it's going to be addressing the huge numbers of immigrants that have come in. So, and it's going to be campaigning to do something about it. And hopefully we'll be hearing some policy suggestions and things like that about what can actually be done to stop this mass immigration. Now, the Glasgow Cabbie is also running a crowdfunder to help to pay for the event, because there's a lot of expenses that go into trying to organize an event of this kind. Unfortunately, the sorts of people who were in George Square on Saturday are going to be holding a counter event at the other side of the square, presumably, and they're going to be screaming and shouting and ranting and raving about the far right, when, of course, as we know, it's just the normal people of Glasgow. And that will be quite an interesting day, because you'll be able to take a walk to see the people who are for us and the people who are against us, as it were. And you'll see that the people of Glasgow, the normal people of Glasgow, will be very much on the side of the Glasgow Cabbie. So he's running a crowdfunder. We'll put the crowdfunder link out on the platforms right now, just so that you've got that. If you want to chip in a $5 for the Glasgow Cabbie, please do. If you can't make it, please do. If you can't make it, but you would have liked to have been there, then why not chip in the cost that you would otherwise have paid for your rail fare. So that's the Glasgow Cabbie's crowdfunder for the 7th of September. And I keep a close eye on what the people who are opposed to it are saying, usually through the pages of the National. And I was reading one yesterday, somebody who's saying what they're going to do at their counter rally. And it just showed to me what I was really referring to earlier, the extent to which so many of those folk have got no real idea about what to do, other than just absolutely ridiculous platitudes. For example, this person in his article was saying that the planned September the 7th rally against the far right, boring, in Glasgow should launch a determined, broad-based campaign for jobs for all, a £15 minimum wage, pensions matching the best in Europe, 100,000 new council houses with affordable rent, investment in health, education, transport, and public services to match the needs of all age groups. And it's like, well, all of that's fine and dandy, whatever you may think about that. And I know we can have a discussion about whether a £15 minimum wage is going to be good or bad for the economy, and how pensions should be funded. And there's certainly a discussion to be made about the failing public services and how best to finance them. But all of these things can only be addressed, and you can only deal with them if the actual population of the country is relatively stable, or at least you know the degree at which it is increasing, so that you know next year how many houses will be needed, how many doctors will be needed, how many nurses, teachers will be needed, how many hospital beds are going to be needed. All these things can only be calculated if you have a relatively stable population. So if you're not going to argue for a stable population, which means arguing for immigration control, if you're not going to argue for that, then all these good intentions are just going to be lost with the wind. It's pointless. You may as well just be, talking to the wall. Unless you're actually keeping the population stable, you don't know what the economic or physical consequences next year are going to be. So you can't plan for it. So keeping a stable population is absolutely essential. Whether you're socialist, whether you're capitalist, you need to have the population stable, which means you need to control the borders. But these guys, they don't think about that. And is it because they don't want to think about that? Or is it because they know that if they had that discussion, they would realize that we're right, and that somehow controlling the borders goes against their ideology? Is that what it is? Consider this, right? The Scottish, let's use a couple of analogies. If you're having a barbecue in your back garden, okay, you need to know how many people are coming before you put on the beef burgers, before you buy in all the fizzy drinks. You need to know who's coming. You can't just say, I'm having a barbecue, turn up, in case 5 turn up or 50 turn up. So you can only plan for the barbecue. You can only plan for the services that you're going to render if you know how many people are going to be there. You can't just say, I'm leaving the border of my garden open and I'm just going to serve the world. You can't do that. If you're at the Scottish Parliament and you're holding one of these meetings that occasionally they do during the summer, and you're having a debate about immigration, is it good for Scotland or is it even better for Scotland? What you do, and what they do is they sell tickets. And why do they sell tickets? Or at least they ask you, yeah, they do sell tickets, come to think of it, at the Festival of Politics. They sell tickets and you have to buy tickets. And the reason they do that is to keep it down to a certain limit and also to know how many people are going to come through the front door, because the room that's held in is only so big and will only seat so many people. So even the Scottish Parliament knows when it's having a debate about immigration, it has to control its borders. It has to sell the tickets and it has to know exactly how many are coming. And then when it's done that, it will be able to provide sufficient refreshments and provide a sufficiently interesting experience for the people who happen to turn up. So you always need to know the numbers, and you can't plan for the future and you can't do anything correctly without knowing what the numbers are going to be. So why, when it comes to immigration, do the politicians throw that idea to the wind? Got some comments coming in here. Hope they're all. Paul says, coincidentally, today is also the Falklands National Day. You're correct. You're correct there, sir. Absolutely. As we mentioned there, the British had to take Tristan da Cunha in order to keep it from the French, so the French couldn't use Tristan da Cunha as a base to rescue the man held at St. Helena. British Legend says the Glasgow Cabbie is #1. Blessed is his name says, I'll be there to protest our islands being sold off. Quite right. Quite right. Christopher says, these lefties are not only clueless, but they conflate unrelated issues. Yes, they do. Conflate unrelated issues. Yes, what we need is not to stop 1.2 million people long-term coming into the country. What we need is a £15 minimum wage. Yeah, that will sort it. That will sort it. Absolutely. Conflate unrelated issues. You're absolutely right. Now, Robert says, a lot of damage was done when we were in the EU. They convinced a lot of our politicians, apart from Nigel Farage, that to accept the world's population was a good idea, but no one really thought about the size of Britain. It's not even as big as Florida and the United States, and they think with the population of 30 million in Florida that it's too much. So why are we accepting more immigrants to boost their population when we're already 65 million or more on the tin? So yes, and that brings us quite nicely to this article. Immigrants fill more jobs than Britons since COVID. And I've been puzzling over this article for 2 days now. It was published in the Times on Monday, August the 12th, 2024. And wait for this, right? The figures say that between December 2019 and December 2023, 1,481,000 more jobs were created in the UK, or what they're calling now employments. Okay, almost 1.5 million more employments were created in the UK. But here's the puzzling thing. Of this number, only 257,000 were taken up by actual UK citizens. Of the rest, we're told, quote, the biggest growth in employments in absolute terms were among nationals of India, 488,000, Nigeria, 279,000, Pakistan, 101,000, and Ghana, 55,000. There were also 175,600 more employments held by people from unspecified other non-EU countries. Now, given that the number of UK citizens is a relatively fixed number, and given that the number of potential Indians and Nigerians and Pakistanis and Ghanaians and people from the rest of the world are virtually limitless, then does this really mean that if there had been no immigrants from outside the UK, then we would have had 1,224,000 job shortages, 1,224,000 vacancies? Or is it really the case that the more immigrants who come in, then the more jobs are created for those immigrants themselves? That must be what's happening. And we looked at an old article which we wrote called Why We Don't Need Immigration to Fill Vacancies. And we'll send that out on the links as well this evening. And what we did there was we quoted the House of Lords Select Committee on Economic Affairs in their report called The Economic Impact of Immigration. That was a report they made in 2008. And in it they said, quote, rising immigration has not resulted in a decline of vacancies because the number of jobs in an economy is not fixed. Immigration increases both the supply of labour and over time the demand for labour, thus creating new vacancies. As William Simpson of the CBI explained, quote, immigrants do not just plug existing holes in the labour market, they create new demands for products and services which are already available, but also those that cater to the immigrant population. So this will, in a dynamic economy, lead to creating new vacancies, close quote, as companies seek to recruit more employees to increase production to meet this extra demand. And it concludes, in other words, because immigration expands the overall economy, it cannot be expected to be an effective policy tool for significantly reducing vacancies. Vacancies are, to a certain extent, a sign of a healthy labour market and economy. They cannot be a good reason for encouraging large-scale labour immigration. So the point here is that more immigration just leads to more immigration, which just leads to more immigration, which just leads to more immigration, because new people create their own new demand for goods and services ad infinitum. And so you don't need immigration to fill vacancies. Immigration creates new vacancies of its own. That's the only way you can explain that there was almost 1.5 million new jobs between 2019 and 2023, but only around about 250,000 of them were actually taken by British citizens. Folks, do we have a winner for our competition? We do have a winner. Now, the question was that the British took St. Helena on this day back in 1816 in order to keep the island from the French, because they were afraid that the French were going to use it as a landing base, a launching pad rather, to rescue what man on St. Helena? And the answer was Napoleon, and the winner was Paul Hadlow. Congratulations, Paul. We will definitely send you these. You're going to love these, by the way. You're going to love these. And folk who don't have this, please do go to our shop. You'll get these on our shop, which is a forceforgood.uk/shop-1. Okay. And you'll also get our wee book for the Union. And you'll also get on there, Scotland Now. A warning to the world. How prescient. And if you would like our book, One Big Country, then what you need to do is go to amazon.co.uk and search Amazon for One Big Country. And you'll get that at amazon.co.uk. It's only a tenner, folks. And it's the first volume of a 5-volume series. Okay. Now, something important I need to say. Well, let's just see any new messages that we need to bring up. Catherine says, well done, Paul. As does Alan. Good stuff. Folks, please do repost on Twitter. We've said a lot of good stuff tonight. It's all true. It all needs to be said. So please do repost on Twitter and give us a follow on YouTube. Thank you so much to the people who gave us super stickers. Let's just say thank you again. That was to Derek and to DTube and to Jimmy Stewart. DTube says, get a pint on me for going out your way and standing up to that wall of hatred. Screenshot. We certainly will, sir. And thank you for your support. Now, next, what we're doing now is we're looking towards our next issue of Union Heart, which is going to be hopefully a 16-pager commemorating the 110th anniversary of World War I. And we're going to be looking at World War I, explaining what all that's about, and also looking at it from a Glasgow and Scottish perspective particularly. And it's going to be a very interesting magazine. It's going to be, of course, free as always for our union supporters, our monthly donors. You can become one by signing up at forceforgood.uk/union-supporters. And what this means, however, is it does require a considerable amount of research and a considerable amount of reading. So we're going to take a week off in order to attempt that. And so we're not going to be broadcasting next Wednesday, just to keep you informed of that. But folks, it just remains for me to say, God bless the United Kingdom and God save the King. See you in a couple of weeks.